Our Fertility Awareness Mastery Mentorship is the training you've been looking for. You've been looking for a way to specialize in fertility awareness and teach cycle charting to your clients. You've been waiting for an opportunity to take a deep dive into using the menstrual cycle as a true vital sign and diagnostic tool. With fertility awareness cycle charting getting more attention and becoming more mainstream, more and more of your clients need support in this area.
In my own practice and then with questions with clients, I had this feeling like, there's just more that I don't know about this and more clarity that I could gain and give to my clients. The method, the way that the cervical mucus charting is done, to me is just like life-changing because the level of detail was really profound and what I needed.
Join us this July for the last class of FAMM that we're offering this year. Head over to fertilityfriday.com/FAMM live to apply now. That's fertilityfriday.com/FAMM-LIVE. This is the Fertility Friday podcast, episode number 579. In today's episode, I'm sharing my interview with one of our FAMM practitioners in training, Lauren Mallers. And we touch on a whole bunch of interesting topics from her early experiences with PMS that ultimately led her to take hormonal contraceptives, to her journey off contraceptives, discovering fertility and fertility awareness. And one of the interesting themes that came up in today's episode was how little Lauren knew about timing and fertility and how to identify ovulation, even though she was in the midst of trying to conceive for quite some time. So she shares some of those details. I think they're very not only interesting, but within the FAMM program, we talk about a lot of the common misconceptions, of course, about the cycle and about fertility. And as she was talking, it was almost word for word, some of the common experiences that our clients have and our clients face. Because even though, if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you are in the know about a lot of these topics, but the average woman still doesn't know much, if anything, about her fertility, even if she's using charting apps. So we're going to get into also the role of charting apps in helping us to identify our fertile days and where they can help and potentially hinder. So before we jump in, let me tell you a little bit about Lauren. Lauren is a certified integrative health practitioner and the founder of Calibrate Health and Wellness, where she helps women address chronic symptoms and hormone imbalances using a personalized, data-driven approach. After a 15-year career in digital marketing and a personal journey through IBS, fertility struggles, and postpartum depletion, Lauren shifted her focus to functional lab testing, nutrition, and lifestyle medicine to reclaim her health. And now she empowers other women to do the same. And without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into today's episode. And I'm excited to be here today with Lauren. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, as you know, and the audience knows, I always love doing the episodes, these particular ones, and I always enjoy the opportunity to have some more time outside of class. And of course, I also love starting with my most favorite question. So tell us a little bit about when you had your first period, what that was like, and I guess take us through your journey, whether you use contraceptives and what led you to want to be diving into fertility awareness at this stage in your career.
Yeah. I started my period when I was 14. I remember the day because my entire family was over, like extended family was over. And I had to like quietly tell my mom that I was bleeding and like needed, and like we had to go to CVS and it was a whole thing. And I was like embarrassed and mortified by it. Like that's what I remember, the just general feeling being. And then I was very quickly put on hormonal contraceptives at 15. So looking back now and like all the knowledge that I have, I like know how wrong that was. But it was interesting. The reason why I was put on them is I was like an angstier, like teenage girl with some mood swings. And I remember going to the doctor with my mom, and the doctor first actually prescribed me or like wanted to prescribe me antidepressants because of my mood swings. And thankfully my mom had like the wherewithal to kind of reject that. It wasn't bad enough for that. But the second option, like the alternative, was birth control pills to help me regulate my moods. So got on those early just for mood and PMS and just like teenage girl things. And then really never went off of them until I was 30 or 20, I guess 28, when we started trying to conceive. But so I had a really long journey with hormonal contraceptives.
Well, it's interesting. I've done so many of these interviews. I've worked with so many clients. I feel like this is the first time I've actually heard someone say that they were specifically put on HCs for their moods.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe talk a little more about that. I mean, obviously you know a lot more now. Your mom was obviously trying to do the best she could with what she knew.
Right.
And you weren't saying no. So I feel like, for one reason or another, it seemed like the best solution. So I'd love to hear more about that from your teenage perspective, but now looking back from your more informed perspective.
Yeah. I think it was just typical, like butting heads with my parents at 15 years old. I like had a boyfriend for the first time and wanted to like be out later, and they had rules and boundaries that I didn't like. And so I think it was very normal mood things. But I think looking back, I mean, this was in like the 90s, early 2000s. And I don't know. I think we were just less willing to kind of deal with and handle uncomfortable emotions back in those days. So I think looking back now, it's like those things I think would get a very different approach. Like those issues in a family dynamic would get a really different approach. But at the time, it was like maybe my mom wanted to keep the peace. Maybe I wanted like more peace in my day and my relationships with my family. And so like, I am really thankful that it wasn't just antidepressants, because I think it was just normal teenage stuff. But yeah, it was hormonal contraceptives as that. And now looking back on what I know, I'm like, I probably wasn't thinking about my diet at the time. I was a very proud vegetarian for like 12 years in my teenage years. I think at 12 years old, I decided I was going to be a vegetarian. I was always interested in like kind of how food impacted my body. And at the time, vegetarianism was like pretty popular. Anyways, I think knowing what I know now, I wasn't eating any animal protein. I was probably living on like breads and salads and like didn't have much nutrients. And like, no wonder I wasn't feeling good or balanced throughout my cycles for that first year of my adolescence. So,
well, and do you remember it's hard because I remember being that age and having zero knowledge about the menstrual cycle. So I wouldn't have been I would have just been irritated when I was irritated, but I wouldn't have known that there would have been a correlation with my cycle. But do you kind of remember that time and anything that stood out to you in terms of the moods and the shifts and just any of that? And then the second question, it's like a layered question, was like, did it improve? So it's like you went on the pill and it was like, okay, now everything's perfect and my mood is wonderful. Like what was the shift after?
Yeah. I definitely was not in tune with my menstrual cycle at the time. I don't think my mom was. I think she knew enough, or she was in tune enough to know that like it didn't warrant antidepressants, but like maybe it was cyclical, and maybe it was like right before my period, I got like much moodier, but I definitely didn't correlate the two at the time. And yeah, getting on them, I think things improved maybe slightly, but I mean, I was still a teenage girl who wanted to do her own thing and like didn't want my parents to tell me what to do. So like that HCs didn't solve that. It's just normal.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. It's interesting to think about from the perspective. And then when you shared a little bit about your diet from everything that we delved into in FAMM, I mean, if the tables were reversed and you had a teenage daughter that was similarly going through and you would have so much more information. So you would kind of know a little bit more, even if because what I found too is you could be so knowledgeable. I have not had a teenage daughter, for anyone who's like a newer listener, but I've just been in the field so long. So sometimes you have someone who has so much knowledge of their daughter, like doesn't want to talk about her periods, right? Like you're just like, I want to have a party for you. And I want to like put up balloons in the street. And the doctor's like, I want to die. Like, don't ever talk to me about this again. So, but either way, regardless of like, if you had a teenage daughter, hypothetically, and then she was having some of these challenges, even if she wasn't open to talking about her cycle and kind of was not really trying to like let you in, you would still kind of know.
Yeah. And I would definitely be like sneaking things into her diet where I could. I think I try to do, I have a 6 and a 3-year-old, and my 3-year-old is a girl. And I think about that a lot, like what I'm going to do differently for her when she goes through menarche. And yeah, I think that it's so good to be more empowered and have more knowledge and just a better understanding of what's really going on, so that you're not jumping to hormonal contraceptives right away, like for any reason, for irregular periods, for all the like normal things that we're prescribed them for, that we're kind of supporting a little bit more naturally and making sure that the foundations are taken care of. And I try to, even with my 6 and 3-year-old now, like talk to them about the food that we're eating and why we're not. My son asked me this morning why kids get candy in their lunch and he doesn't. And like, we just don't have candy in our house. I try not to be like fear mongering about it, and I don't want them to feel like it's bad, but it's just that it doesn't support our body the way that, like, I don't know, our chicken and our beef and our vegetables do. And so that's why. So I think starting early and talking to them about that, like from a really young age and like in ways that they can understand, I think hopefully my hope is that when my daughter's 13, my son's older, that they understand and can like make decisions for themselves a little bit better too.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to be a parent in this time. And so I know my kids I don't know if they're excited or annoyed. I don't know. I'm not like that necessarily concerned about how they think about it, but they already know that the food pyramid, mommy's not a fan. And that what we need to be talking about macronutrients, that I'm always talking about how they need to get enough protein. And so they're just like, okay, mom. Yeah, I get it.
I know. My 6-year-old's super into it. It's really cute. We were visiting family this past weekend, and we went out to lunch, and we were at this like little market, and they had these like hot dog covered in pretzel things that we got the kids for lunch. That's what my grandma wanted. He got home and told everybody in the house that he only had one protein, and so he couldn't have any more sugar for the day.
I love it.
I was like, bravo, bud.
Oh my goodness. And if they ever make the mistake about asking about anything to do with reproduction, it's just like, because now my eldest is 12. And so he's like pre-puberty. I joke that I can smell the testosterone coming in because he's got all the attitude and everything like that. And I'm like, hey, if you want to grow up and be big and tall like daddy, you're going to need to eat your liver and organ meat. But then my kids love liver and stuff because I brainwashed them to like it from when they were toddlers. Yeah. So as a parent, I don't know that you have like full control. Your kids can be picky eaters and all that. But the way I look at it is like, I'm not really that concerned about their preferences. Whatever I cook is going to keep coming back to the table. So it's like, if you didn't like broccoli, that's nice. But like every time we make broccoli, it's still going to find its way to your plate.
Yep.
For like ever. So like from age 1, moving forward.
Yeah. It's so important to just, not give up. I think it's so easy to give up when they're picky and not want to like waste food. But like you said, like one piece of broccoli on their plate every single time. Like eventually it's not going away or something.
Similarly with like the pate, because in my house it's pate, and even the cod liver oil.
That's awesome.
It just keeps coming around. Well, so before we get totally down, I actually liked that little side note. Yeah. I feel like that was fun to talk a little bit. And I do think for anyone who's listening who has children, whether they're small children or older children, or is thinking about having children, it is interesting to think about how your knowledge around nutrition affects how you're going to, like what you're going to eat and how you're going to approach this with your kids. So I do think it's useful to talk a little bit about that. Yeah. So back to your story though. So you shared with us that you did have a long experience with contraceptives. So maybe share a little bit about that experience. If you did notice anything, you could tell us a little bit about what it was like when you transitioned off. And I'm also curious to know how your professional story kind of falls in. So tell us a little bit about how you got into the work that you're doing now and how you ended up finding your way to fertility awareness charting.
Yeah. So yes, I was on hormonal contraceptives for almost 15 years. Throughout my 20s, like despite me always being interested in food and just like kind of wellness in general, I had gotten to yoga certifications. I was just always really interested in this space, even though I had a career in marketing, which is like a whole nother story. I kind of got burnt out with my corporate career, and I felt it in sort of the health issues that were starting to manifest. I had really, really bad gut issues. And my family sort of has a history of IBS and those types of symptoms. So I just always kind of thought that it was something I'd have to live with. But I think the deeper down the wellness rabbit hole I got, the more I was just like unwilling to accept that I was going to have to live with that for the rest of my life, and just kept digging for answers. I would like try a new diet. So it like started off slowly, and it took me a long time to get to where I'm at now. But the gut issues were really like a kicking off point for me wanting to understand more. So I would try a new diet. I would put a new supplement in my routine. And I would kind of like, or I would start meditating. So like I understood that stress was really impactful to what I was feeling in my gut. And I would like sort of get things under control every once in a while. And then things would go off the rails and I'd be right back to where I started. So I was just kind of dealing with these gut issues. But I think what I understand now is that's when I decided to get off hormonal contraceptives, when my husband and I decided to start trying for our first kid. Because I was eating well and thought I had this like great understanding of nutrition and how to take care of myself. I was doing yoga all the time. I was working out. I thought that I was doing all the right things. So I was a little smug when I got off birth control and was like, that like 1 year time period that they tell you need to like conceive, that's not going to apply to me. So I was a little like blindsided when 9 months into us trying to conceive, we still hadn't. I had 2 chemical pregnancies throughout that time period too, which was really confusing. And there's not a lot of information online about what that is. And doctors don't really treat it like a miscarriage. So it felt like I was bugging them when I had questions about it. They don't see you in the office until 8 weeks. So when you're bleeding at 5 or 6, nobody wants to talk to you. And so I got really really disheartened and frustrated and started like not trusting myself. Eventually we did conceive. So I think I probably in that year-long birth control transition period and just didn't want to believe it. But at the same time, I actually found the Ava bracelet. This was 7, 8 years ago. So it was like kind of at the beginning of their journey. But the BBT tracking of the Ava bracelet was really, I think, what got me pregnant. I started understanding like when I was actually ovulating versus when my app was telling me I was ovulating. They're 2 very different things. I understood that now. Yeah, eventually conceived a healthy baby boy, but my postpartum experience was nothing to write home about. I was like super depleted. I hadn't really like taken care of myself the way I now understand we need to take care of ourselves for hormonal health specifically. And yeah, just kind of kept dealing with the gut issues. And long story short, I started taking other health classes. So I did a functional nutrition course. I got a health certification. And then finally, what sort of helped me really overcome my gut issues was functional lab testing. And I got certified in that too, and just decided to leave marketing and start my own health and wellness practice.
It's official. Registration is open for our Fertility Awareness Mastery Mentorship. And this is the last class that we're offering this year in 2025. This is your opportunity to specialize in fertility, advanced chart interpretation, and finally have the skills and confidence to support your clients resolve their most pressing menstrual cycle and hormone issues and completely transform your women's health practice. But don't take my word for it. Here's what Katie Ewan, one of our FAMM grads, had to say about it.
So much of it is bringing in your charts and clients' charts and seeing real life charts because they don't look like what the textbooks tell you. So what this has really given me is the confidence to then go and teach people this method for whatever their desired use is, and then be able to tailor the treatment to exactly where they are in their cycle, rather than kind of being like, do you think you've ovulated? Like, oh, I don't know. Like, So like it's made it really specific. I just have this like wealth of knowledge now and this ability to teach people like exactly where they are in their cycle and for them to understand exactly what's going on. And there's no assuming anymore. Like I just assumed I ovulated on day 14 because that's where everything told me. And actually that first chart, what was day 20 or something? Like just because I had a 28-day cycle, it was far from what I thought it was. And like I've got the data now to back that up. And I've done courses before where I'm like, they're just doing written work so they can tick off part of the certification, where it's like everything followed on from the next thing and you just feel so equipped and so supported to then go forward with your clients. And it's been the best thing I've done this year, 100%, because it's just given me so much confidence.
And now it's your turn. Join us in our last class of 2025. We're starting on July the 8th, so make sure to apply now. Head over to fertilityfriday.com/FAMM live. That's fertilityfriday.com/FAMMLIVE. Well, I mean, thank you for sharing your story. And I'm sorry to hear about your losses early on. It's such a challenging, I mean, we recently had Dr. Marguerite Duane come and present to our FAMM class. And she spent 2 years doing a specific fellowship where she was researching miscarriage. And she shared a lot of that data with us. She shared a little bit of data on her recent podcast episode, which we'll link to, but she really went into a lot of depth in that presentation. And it made me think of exactly what you said, because you said that typically when you get pregnant, they don't really see you before 8 or 10 weeks. And if you do experience, and she talked a little bit about that, the reason why they do is but there's a statistically higher rate of miscarriage, before that time. And so maybe it's I don't know if it's a way for them to save money or for practical purposes, but one of the things Dr. Duane was advocating for was early screening to really prevent a lot of those early miscarriages, when it seems like our medical community just perceives it to be, this is just how it is. And that's just, all these pregnancies just end in miscarriage. We don't even look at it. But she shared a lot of research indicate that you can actually prevent a lot of those earlier miscarriages with early screening and addressing that. So I can appreciate your frustration. And I can just imagine how many women are listening who may have had a similar situation where it's just, you're so confused. You were told that you were going to get pregnant so easily.
Yeah.
You're having this early miscarriage. The doctor doesn't even want to see you. They won't even book an appointment. And then, if you start bleeding, then they'll talk to you. But it's just, so yeah, at this point, I don't even know what to say. I just have been expressing my distaste for some of these medical practices for like my whole life. So
yeah,
hopefully at some point we see this shifting. And with research, I feel a little bit more hopeful hearing Dr. Duane's research in this area. Maybe she will somehow start to impact that change where they actually see the clinical benefits of screening women sooner.
Yeah. Especially women over 30. And that's really where the fertility awareness and charting cycles, I wanted to learn more about this, because what I found was I was helping a lot of women in my just health coaching and integrative health practice. And I didn't feel like I was doing them a good service by not understanding hormonal shifts and fluctuations and how their hormones were impacting other parts of their body. And I think a lot of the general recommendations, even some of the recommendations that I learned in some of my previous trainings, didn't feel like it supported women. It felt like it was the general recommendations that we hear all the time based on research that's been done on men. And I just really wanted to dive in more to offer really specific advice for women who might not even know that they have hormonal needs, hormonal issues, but the other things that they're experiencing, like the gut issues and things like that, are impacting their hormones, whether they know it or not. And using the cycle as a vital sign, I'm huge into data, and I love looking into lab data and things like that. But what I love about cycle charting, what I'm learning, is that data can be available to us all month long for free. And we don't have to initially jump into all of these expensive testing. We can kind of get some baseline knowledge just from paying attention to what our body is telling us.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I love that you shared that. So you're trying to conceive and it's obviously not happening, which is shocking. It's just, like I said, I can just imagine how many women have had the similar experience, because I've certainly worked with many women for whom this is, because it's unreal. Just the indoctrination in junior high and high school alone sets you up to have this expectation that you're just going to get pregnant just so simply. And obviously some people do for sure, but a lot of women, there's just that post-pill transition phase that we were never taught about. And so you mentioned your experience with the Ava bracelet, kind of having that tangible way to actually see when ovulation had happened, to actually finally understand more intimately, I guess, what was going on hormonally. And you said that allowed you to identify ovulation, which is hugely helpful. Yep. We can't underestimate the importance of correct timing for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Turns out we were, I'm sure the post-hormonal transition phase, was playing into it too. And I probably needed some months to just like my body to get back to normal. Maybe I wasn't ovulating at all in the first few months. I have no idea because I wasn't charting at the time. But turns out we were mistiming by at least 5 days. I was ovulating way late from what I found out. And we were timing it around day 14 because that's what my rhythm-based app was telling me. So I thought I was charting. I was paying attention to when my period was going to come next. But it was very much just like an algorithm that was estimating and not really taking any real data into account.
Mm-hmm. I feel like for you having this personal experience, because you've obviously heard me talk about that a whole lot, just in our training, we talk about it. But for you having had that experience, you didn't have that information available to you. You were timing based on the day 14. Obviously, we're all indoctrinated with that. And you actually saw that you were able to conceive much quicker once you started timing correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So working with fertility clients who are trying to conceive, I feel like those types of experiences, we can look back on them and beat ourselves up. But at the end of the day, like, why? We didn't know. Nobody taught us. There's no room to beat up ourselves at all. But that's going to be so powerful for you to share with your clients. And it helps you, I feel like it helps you to even to be an even better advocate for this.
Yeah. I'm such a huge fan of, I don't know, I think the more I'm working with women on cycle charting specifically, I think we all think, I mean, I said this before too, I thought I was charting my cycle. And I think the majority of the women I'm starting to work with, they think they're charting their cycle because they have an app. It tells them when their period's coming and it's more or less accurate. So they think they know exactly what's going on. But I think it's so powerful to have like an extra layer of data and information and really understand what's going on, because not only can it tell us like when we're ovulating in time correctly, but I think we've talked about this before too, it probably could have cued me into the gut issues and what was actually going on. And maybe I would have gotten the testing that I needed to do there done earlier. So I think that was playing into maybe low progesterone, delayed ovulation. Like my body was just stressed out because of my gut issues. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, and of course, as we record this, you are well into your FAMM journey. You are in the practicum stage. You've been applying this with some of your early clients. And so maybe share with us what has changed for you in your practice, like from when you started to now and what you're kind of looking to do in the future once you complete everything. How has this changed, whether it's changed your approach or your perspective or just the work that you're doing with your clients?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's changed a few things, and all I'm really excited about. I originally was kind of just diving into lab work with women and gut testing right off the bat. And I am now taking sort of like a more, I don't know if it's like a conservative approach, but just like, let's see what your body's telling us first. And then we'll decide what tests we need to do. And if we even need to do anything, depending on their goals. If their goal is to get pregnant, we might not need to do any testing. We might just need to chart and kind of understand how our body needs to be supported best. And so I think clients appreciate that, at least what I've seen. It's like, if you don't have to spend $250 on like a functional lab test, like great. So that's changed. It's sort of like a wait and see approach. And like, let's use your body as our first line of data before we jump into adding any like quantitative data. I'm also really excited to focus on fertility and like really niching down into women who are over 30, who are trying to conceive or thinking about trying to conceive in the next like year or two, and just wants to like set their body up for the most success. One of my first, a client that I had been working with already before I started the program, I was kind of finishing things out with her a few months into the program. So I didn't have all the knowledge yet, but she was a fertility client trying to get pregnant. We had done a lot of diet and lifestyle things, which were, when we were looking at her cycle and her aura data, we saw that it was normalizing the timing. So she had really long cycles. It was like shortening the length of her cycle. So it was working. And I remember listening to one of the lectures and like hearing you talk about ovulation timing and that the luteal phase is pretty static and the follicular phase is where we see the most variability. And literally just that one piece of information and telling her that like she might be timing things wrong, she was able to conceive naturally, like 2 months before her IVF like process would have started. And that was just the most like rewarding thing. And I think sometimes we're overcomplicating what needs to be done in the wellness world and wellness sphere. And I just want to simplify things for people so that they don't feel so overwhelmed by their fertility journey and their bodies. So
I mean, I love that so much. It's one of the things that can be hard to convey, right? Like it's easy for you to understand because you're in the program. You've seen all the things and you've heard the philosophy behind it. But I feel like you really touched on one of the most important pieces of it, which is that the cycle knowledge allows us to be a lot more specific, where we don't have to treat everybody exactly the same, where we don't just have to have this protocol where everybody has to spend $2,000 on all of these tests before we even do anything. And not that there's like, I'm not anti-testing at all. The approach that we take though, is that we get that baseline data from the person first. And I think what you pointed out is really important, especially PCOS. You already know I have a whole lot to say about PCOS, from women being misdiagnosed, women who have PCOS but don't meet the physical expectation of their practitioner, because often practitioners are expecting women with PCOS to be significantly overweight. And so if you have somebody who presents with a fairly normal body shape, who literally meets the diagnostic criteria, sometimes a diagnosis is not made. And then you have, on the other hand, women who are being diagnosed but don't necessarily meet the diagnostic criteria. And then you have women who are, identified correctly with PCOS, but are told that that means they won't be able to have children naturally, which is not, it's just not true. And especially from the charting standpoint, the first step of just understanding correct timing can literally, for some women, be sufficient. Obviously, there's other issues that need to be addressed as well. But if you add those things together, the timing aspect, really understanding, even with irregular long cycles, you can still learn how to time sex correctly to improve your chances of conception. Plus, you can address the insulin resistance inflammation issues through our FAMM processes, right? So when you add those things together, a lot of women are able to conceive. So I think the point you were making, if we go back to it, was that we don't have to start with this huge cookie cutter approach that involves all of these things. Like, we can assess it first based on the cycle information, cycle data, and see what's really going on. And then once we identify certain issues that are recurring, then we can go move forward with some of those testing so that we're taking more of a customized approach instead of and like you said, you've already found that your clients are appreciating that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think nobody wants a cookie cutter approach. They want to feel like they're doing the things that are right for them. And I think that's where practitioners come in, because there's just so much information online that I don't know, where do you start? It's hard to know what to do first and where to start.
And I'm certainly, obviously I've been doing this type of work for a long time. I feel like I'm a bit biased in it, but I always say that I can't imagine working in women's health without having this information. And until you really dive in, you might not realize how powerful it can be. It doesn't replace the need for additional testing, but in many cases, it can reduce it. Because instead of having not a lot of data and needing the testing to give you the first piece of information, you can actually get a lot of the data and then, like you said, customize and do the specific testing that really stands out. Like, okay, well, we see that you're having this issue with your hormones in this stage of your cycle. So let's do these tests to see what's going on there instead of having to do every single thing under the sun.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, we could literally delve into all of these things all day long. But as we start wrapping up, one of the questions I love to ask is, if somebody who is thinking about jumping into the FAMM program, who's been kind of lurking for a while, what, if anything, would you want them to know about your experience?
Oh, I feel like I've done a lot of certification programs. And this one, I'm not just saying because I'm on the phone with you, I promise. It's honestly been the most valuable because of the live aspect of it. I think a lot of health and wellness certifications these days are like just online programs. They're self-paced, which has a place and is valuable for other reasons. But I think that just having people to talk about cases with and ask questions live about what's going on, and it's been extremely valuable just in terms of like my learning and being able to apply what I'm learning directly to my clients immediately. I also really appreciated like having to go through this process myself and learning about cycle tracking in a deeper way. Like I said, I didn't have a ton of cycle tracking other than like the Ava bracelet. I understood BBT, but everything else was like brand new to me, and all of the like cycle parameters and how to assess somebody's health based on the cycle parameters. It's so impactful. And I think even just for yourself, it's just hugely valuable. So highly recommend if anybody's on the fence.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I mean, I always say that I feel like there's certain things that you can't learn unless you do it. I feel like a lot of us approach cycle charting with a lot of assumptions. And I can't speak to everyone's assumptions, but I feel like some of the assumptions are that it's natural, so it's going to be easy, and even assumptions about your own cycle. Because if you're in the health field already, obviously you're doing a lot. You're doing a lot of making a lot of healthy choices. And especially for practitioners who don't necessarily have any cycle issues that are just beyond what you would think, like just nothing that's really bothering them. So I feel like there's a lot of assumptions that are made. But interestingly, when you dive in and start charting your own cycle, inevitably you learn something, right?
Yeah.
Did you find anything out that surprised you that you didn't anticipate or that you never thought you would know? Or
Yeah. Huge. So the luteal phase information and that needing to be 12 to 14 days for it to be optimal. I'm shook by like how still I think my body, I've done a lot to address my gut issues, but I think there's still some things I need to address because my luteal phase is consistently 10 days or less. And on really stressful, I remember one of the months, it was probably a hot seat. We went through, I had a 7-day luteal phase from the flu, some travel. And so I think there's just some still underlying things that I need to address. It actually prompted me to take a Lyme disease test because of just some things that I had been witnessing and noticing. And that came back positive. So I think like it just, when you understand that and you're like, I'm doing everything that I possibly can to lengthen my luteal phase. I've cut out coffee. I'm doing so much and it's still at 10. It kind of tips you into like, could there be something else here? And I don't know if I would have found that at this stage of my life. It probably would have been much later in my life where I would have thought to test and found that out. So yeah, I think it's just hugely valuable.
That's such a good example for so many reasons. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I firmly stand behind the need for training, because I feel like one of the assumptions that I was talking about is if you experience something personally and you have personally experienced that thing for quite a while, we tend to normalize it and just assume, especially if we don't have the training in the background to recognize that it's not. So one of the benefits of having been in the field for so long and thousands of clients later, all the different charts that I've seen, there is an actual normal parameter guideline for human women. And if you're consistently out of it, it doesn't just mean like, hi, I'm Lauren and I just have 10 day, like, right, 10-day luteal phases. And that's just how it is. Like, and this is how we get. This is one of the things where for a lot of our practitioners in the program, they start to realize that when you see a client consistently having 15-day luteal phases, it starts to, and other clients having 7-day luteal phases, you really have to start thinking, well, what is optimal and what is normal? And so that's such a great example because certainly I've heard it all. Oh, mine are never that long. That's just what's normal for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I was that way when I first started charting because my cycles were 38 days, I think, on like in my early 20s when I first started charting. I do think I had some insulin resistant issues and I definitely know I had some thyroid issues, but I didn't know that at the time.
Right.
I was just like, oh, I just have long cycles. It's cool. Like some people have short ones. I have longer ones. Like I'm Lisa, I've got longer cycles. And then fortunately for me, I had a charting instructor who was like, actually, no, your temperatures are like way too low and your cycles are way too long. Like you should go get your thyroid tested. And that was really one of the key moments in my understanding and why to this day I'm still talking about the menstrual cycle being like a vital sign. Because that was the moment for me where I was like, what do you mean you can look at my cycle and tell me I have an issue with my thyroid? And like,
Totally.
I thought my long cycles were fine. Like what is actually happening? And then I did have a positive test, similarly to your experience having the positive test for Lyme. And you're like, oh, so what I thought was normal actually wasn't. And it was actually an indication of something. And like you said, if that hadn't been the case, I mean, I didn't have any severe symptoms or anything. So I definitely wouldn't have figured that out in my early 20s.
Yeah, it's so powerful. And I'm just really thankful for all the knowledge that I have. And I can't wait to help other people understand this better too.
So before we wrap up here, let us know a little bit more about you, what you do, share with us where you are in the world, how people can get a hold of you, website, socials, all the things, all the places, and anything that's exciting that's happening in your world these days.
Yeah. So I started, after all of my own health issues, I started a company called Calibrate Health and Wellness. It's a little play on my love of data and just having information to make decisions off of. We specialize in root cause, hormone, and fertility support for women over 30, and really just help women feel more empowered and less overwhelmed. I like to simplify what's going on so that they can do what's going to move the needle for them and forget all the rest. But I'm on Instagram at calibrate.well, and I'm in Denver, Colorado, but I see clients all over the United States. So
amazing. Well, we will make sure to link all of the places for anyone who's listening on the go. And thank you so much for being here, Lauren. This conversation was so much fun, and I feel like we covered a lot of really interesting topics.
Thanks for having me, Lisa.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode and you're wanting to share it with a friend, or you're wanting to grab any of the links that we talked about, head over to fertilityfriday.com/579. One of the themes and takeaways that stood out to me after having this conversation with Lauren was, I think, how much we can take for granted our knowledge. So if you've been a longtime listener of the podcast and you've discovered fertility awareness, if you've charted your own cycles, or whether you've even just dabbled in it or thought about it, there's a lot that you know about your cycle, just having been here and been part of the community. And the longer that we're in it, the longer that we're in the community, the longer that we chart our cycles, the easier it is to forget where we started from, where our knowledge was at the very beginning of our journey, and where our clients, where their knowledge base is as well. And it's so easy to underestimate how transformative and incredible this knowledge can be for your clients. And it doesn't matter whether your clients have an incredibly significant educational background. It doesn't matter if your clients have seen multiple practitioners. The average woman has done all of those things and still doesn't have very much, if any, knowledge about her cycle. And it doesn't always work as specifically as it did in Lauren's case, but for many women, that's literally what it is. If you are timing your sex every month based on day 14, and you don't know about your cycle, and you don't know that ovulation shifts and changes based on what's happening, even just a few days here and there from cycle to cycle, although some women experience significant shifts in ovulation. But if you don't have that information and the ability to be able to identify which days are fertile, which days are not, be really, really clear on it, and to know which ways are more effective, or how to integrate apps, how to integrate LH testing strips, how to do this if your cycle is irregular. There's so many women out there with PCOS who are just told that they can't get pregnant, and that's not true. It's still possible to identify the fertile window, even if your cycle is 90 days long. It's not ideal, of course, and you want to work towards reducing the length of that cycle by addressing some of those issues. But at the same time, even if the cycle is irregular, you can still learn how to time sex correctly. And as a practitioner, if you don't have the skill, then your clients are really missing out on this incredible opportunity. So that's my biggest takeaway from today's interview with Lauren, because she shared her experience of kind of going into it like most of us do until we discover this knowledge. So definitely an important reminder, I think, for all of us, especially those of us who have been immersed in this knowledge and this field for quite some time. So with that said, I hope you have a wonderful weekend whenever you're tuning into the show. And of course, as always, until next time, be well and happy charting. If you've been loving the podcast, then I know you'll love our Fertility Awareness Mastery Mentorship. This is our certification program designed specifically for women's health professionals. Not only does FAMM certify you to teach fertility awareness to your clients in practice, but we dive deep into the science, equipping you to use your menstrual cycle as a vital sign and diagnostic tool with your clients.
When I decided to sign up, it was super last minute. I might have been like your last person or something. I didn't know if I should do it, because I kind of had this weird imposter syndrome of like, is this for me? I remember I talked to a friend and she was just like, Grace, you care about this so much. Like, why would you not do it? It sounds like such an amazing opportunity. And it has been better than I anticipated. Every certification that I've done up until this point, and I've done many, and I just love how much in-person contact there is, how we like actually get to know each other. And that has been the most wonderful part about the program. Other things that I've done, it's very kind of screens off. If there is an in-person element, screens off, nobody talks. And I love that that's the case here. Like, you can ask as many questions as you want. It's been probably the best part about this year for me. And I definitely did not have time for it. So if you think that's you'll figure it out.
Head over to fertilityfriday.com/FAMMlive to apply now. That's fertilityfriday.com/FAMMLIVE.